Let's just take a few more minutes to make sure our motivation is a really positive one, an altruistic one. Though we probably already started off the day with such a motivation, but it's good to renew it. Sometimes it slips our mind. So we are one of almost 8 billion human beings on this planet. There are many other beings as well that are so many we can't even count them. If we think about all the animals and insects and creatures in the sea and birds in the air and so on. Not just this planet. Buddhism says there's many other worlds where there are living beings. So there's just a huge number of living beings. And like us, they all wish happiness, peace, positive experiences. They want to be safe, comfortable, free of harm, danger, suffering. How wonderful it would be if all living beings could have happiness and positive experiences and not experience any suffering or bad experiences. And we can do something about that by getting in touch with awakening our Buddha nature, our potential for enlightenment, and start cultivating it, making it more and more real and manifest and alive in our lives, doing everything we can to help others, refraining as much as we can from harming others, and creating the causes for enlightenment to be able to help all other beings in the best possible way. And that's what we're looking at in these teachings. Specifically, we're looking at the Bodhisattva vow, where we make a commitment to live our lives in such a way that we help and not harm others and create the causes for enlightenment. So let's really make sure we're doing this, listening to this talk and contemplating the meaning of the words and generating a strong aspiration to practice them in our lives as much as we can, so that we can benefit all living beings throughout space. I was just thinking, today's the last day of 2020, but in fact, it's already 2021 in some parts of the world, right? New Zealand, Australia, maybe Singapore also, already 2021. So Happy New Year to those who've already gotten there and will be there soon. Okay, so we've been going through the Bodhisattva vow, which has 18 root downfalls, 46 secondary misdeeds. We finished the 18 and now we're going through the secondary misdeeds. And so these are 46 in number and they are divided into 7 groups. The first 6 groups are related to the 6 perfections, the 6 far-reaching attitudes. Then there's one last group related to the ethics of benefiting others. So these misdeeds, which we are trying to avoid, are hindrances to those practices, to the 6 perfections and the ethics of benefiting others. And yesterday I had a question about one of the vows, and I discovered that maybe you know this already, in Volume 5, which is called In Praise of Great Compassion, Volume 5 of the Library of Wisdom and Compassion, there are also these Bodhisattva vows starting on page 223. and might be a more accurate rendition of the vows than in the Red Prayer Book. I found, I'll come to it later. I don't have the Red Prayer Book here. But yeah, one of the vows is a little unclear in the Red Prayer Book. Okay, so we're up to vow number 10, and this is under the perfection of ethics. Okay, so the first, how many? 7 are related to the perfection of giving. We did those already. The second 9 of the 46 are related to ethics. Okay, so number 10 says, doing only limited actions to benefit sentient beings, such as strictly keeping the Vinaya rules in situations when not doing so would be of greater benefit to others. So this is mainly for those who have taken precepts, the Pratimoksha precepts, which there's different types of those, different groups of those, the vows of fully ordained nuns, fully ordained monks, novice nuns. Also lay vows, the 5 precepts for lay people. So those are precepts that many of us take. And so I'll read what Alex Berzin says about this one. He says, Buddha gave many minor rules for monastics to train their behavior. For instance, always to have our 3 sets of robes where we sleep. So this is one of the vows that bhikshus and bhikshunis have. We're supposed to keep our 3 robes with us, which are, there's 2 yellow robes and 1, the shamdap. And these are robes we wear when we are ordained and they get blessed. So we're supposed to keep them with us every night and not be separated from them overnight. Sometimes, however, the needs of others overrides the necessity to follow this minor training. So among the precepts, like we have 348, and they're divided into different groups, and some of them are serious. We really have to keep those, but others are considered less important, less serious. So keeping our 3 robes with us overnight is in the group of less serious precepts. So he says, for example, if somebody falls sick and we need to stay overnight to take care of that person, if because of anger or spite toward the person, or simply laziness to stay up all night, we decline on the grounds that we do not have our 3 sets of robes with us. Okay, so you might make that excuse, I can't stay overnight to take care of you because I don't have my robes with me. They're back in the monastery. so we don't stay overnight with this person for that reason. And if it's done out of affliction, like we don't like this person, we want to make them unhappy, or if it's just laziness, but I don't want to stay up all night. But we use that as an excuse to not stay with this person. So this would be an example of committing this misdeed. It says, being a rigid fanatic with rules hampers our balanced development of ethical self-discipline. And Dakpo Rinpoche says, in the beginning, it's helpful to keep Vinaya rules carefully to reduce desire. So when we first ordained, it is important to really keep our rules very, very carefully, to train ourselves in discipline and also non-attachment and so on. Later, when our mind is stronger and our desire is decreased and our altruism is greater, we no longer need to keep the Pratimoksha vows so strictly if doing so would hinder our work for others. So we have to balance, what's going to be more beneficial for others. And if there's greater benefit to others, then, we can not pay so much attention to those rules. Not that we disregard them. And the example he gives is limiting the number of belongings. So we have a precept, to not have so many things, which is good to keep to reduce our attachment. But he gives some examples here. Until we gain control of our minds, and as long as we are still subject to many disturbing factors such as attachment, it is better to keep few possessions and content ourselves with less. Once we have fortified ourselves with a strong altruistic aspiration to enlightenment and are no longer vulnerable to the kleshas, the afflictive emotions, owning great wealth is a notable advantage in Bodhisattva practice. I don't know if he's referring to monastics. I don't know if he's talking about, he himself is a layperson, but yeah. But maybe even in a monastic, if you have wealth, but you don't use it for your own attachment, but you use it to benefit others, you give it away and help others who are less fortunate and hungry and so on and so forth. He goes on to say, possessions and wealth are neutral. They're not good or bad. It is only when having them prompts our disturbing attitudes that it is better to limit them. When great wealth no longer stimulates our kleshas, our afflictions, and we can use it to benefit others without risk, it is a great gift. So each of us must determine which is our case. So the next one is not doing non-virtuous actions of body and speech with loving compassion when circumstances deem it necessary in order to benefit others. So this is mainly referring to the 7 non-virtuous actions of body and speech. There's 3 of body: killing, stealing, sexual misconduct. 4 of speech: telling lies, harsh speech, divisive speech, and gossip. So it's mainly referring to those, but maybe others as well. So Alex says, occasionally certain extreme situations arise in which the welfare of others is seriously jeopardized, and there's no alternative left to prevent a tragedy other than committing one of the 7 destructive actions of body and speech, like killing and so forth. If we commit such an action without any disturbing emotion at the time, such as anger, desire, or ignorance about karma, but are motivated only by the wish to prevent others suffering, and being totally willing to accept on ourselves whatever negative consequences may come. Like that story of the Buddha in a previous life when he was a Bodhisattva ship captain. And he knew there was one guy on the ship who was planning to kill all the others who were merchants. There were like all these merchants on the ship with lots of gold and jewels and so forth. This guy was going to kill them all and take their wealth. And he realized that there was no alternative other than killing this person. But he knew that killing was wrong, and he knew he might experience suffering as a result of that. But he was willing to undergo that suffering out of compassion for the people who would be killed and also for the would-be killer, because he would create such heavy, heavy negative karma. So he didn't want them to have all that suffering and was willing to take on suffering himself. So in that case, this act of killing was not really a non-virtue, negative action. And so in this kind of situation, we do not damage our practice of ethical discipline. And in fact, we build up a tremendous amount of positive force, merit, that speeds us on our spiritual paths. Dr. Rinpoche says, in fact, only highly developed beings can perform harmful deeds without actually doing anything wrong. So I know I'm not at that point. They have the wisdom to know when actions that are normally considered negative serve the cause of others, and their motives are entirely pure because they've overcome egoism and self-interest. And he says his teacher said that this actually refers to bodhisattvas who are on the path of preparation up to the path of seeing. So that means bodhisattvas who have achieved the union of calm abiding and special insight with respect to emptiness. So that's a pretty high level of, they already have uncontrived bodhicitta, and on top of that, a realization of emptiness and the union of calm abiding, calm abiding and special insight regarding emptiness. So that's a pretty high level. But he also says there's a lot of debate about this point. And Lama Tsongkhapa says, in order to do something like killing, you have to have uncontrived bodhicitta, have trained in the 6 perfections a long time, and be motivated by intense compassion at the time of the action. And there must be no alternative solution, no other way. And he said, also, this concerns only lay bodhisattvas. If an ordained bodhisattva has to commit one of these 7 actions, they should first return their monastic vows temporarily. So if the person, fits this criteria, then there would be no negative karma, only good karma. Okay, so the first 4 of these vows in the section related to ethics, the perfection of ethics, they are mainly concerned with one's own situation. The next 3, 12, 13, and 14, are about others' situations. So number 12, the way it's written in the Red Prayer Book is willingly accepting things that either you or others have obtained by any of the wrong livelihoods. So there's these 5 wrong livelihoods. One is hypocrisy. For example, pretending to be something you're not, pretending to have qualities that you don't have, pretending to be very virtuous and very devoted when it's not really how you are. And the second one is hinting. The example they often give is saying something like, oh, that pair of shoes you gave me last year was really, really helpful. And now they're kind of worn out, and I don't know, something like that, to, hinting to try to get someone to give you something. And then flattery. Flattery would be to, and we know what flattery is, saying really nice things to somebody, praising them with the hope. Of course, it's good to praise people, point out their good qualities, but if it's done with the motivation of getting something from them, then that's a wrong livelihood. And then coercion is, using your power or position in a forceful way to get people to give you things. Or bribery. Bribery would be giving something small, hoping the other person will give you something big in return. So it's mainly about the motivation, using this kind of crooked, not straightforward methods for getting things. So Alex's explanation, he calls it earning our living through wrong livelihood. And such livelihoods employ dishonest or devious means. And we resort to such means because of total lack of a sense of moral self-dignity or reserve. And it seems to me when I read the commentaries that this one is more about you yourself using these 5 wrong livelihoods in order to acquire whatever you need, food, clothes, and so on. Because to say willingly accepting things that others have obtained by any of the wrong livelihoods, to me that's a little dubious, because how would you know? It would be very hard to know. Somebody makes you an offering, are you going to say, how did you get this? Did you use one of these 5 wrong livelihoods to get this? And now you're giving it to me? If you knew for sure, then it would be better not to accept it. But otherwise, it would be very difficult to know if they used one of those. And like I say, most of the commentaries, they explain just in terms of you yourself using wrong livelihoods to acquire things. Yeah, so in volume 5, this is explained as acquiring requisites like food, shelter, clothing, or medicine, and other goods by any of these wrong livelihoods. Yeah, so it only mentions using them oneself. Then next one, number 13. Being distracted by and having a strong attachment to amusement or without any beneficial purpose, leading others to join in distracting activities. So Alex's explanation says, because of being discontent, restless, bored, or hyperactive, and desirous for some excitement, running off to some frivolous distraction, like wandering in a shopping mall, flipping through the stations on the television, playing computer games, and so on. We become completely engrossed and out of control. So Dr. Rinpoche's explanations, he talks about excitement. Excitement is a secondary affliction. It's one of the 20 secondary afflictions. And it comes up in the teachings on how to develop serenity, calm abiding. This is one of the main hindrances. We're trying to keep our mind focused on our object of meditation, a virtuous object, but the mind just keeps running away to other things, usually things that we're attached to, things that we're excited about. So I'm sure we're all very familiar with that. And so this is something we need to reduce, work on overcoming. So if we allow ourselves to get caught up in it and then act out the wish to enjoy these things, that it increases excitement. And he actually says, just having the strong wish to engage in parties, games, festivities, and entertainment is a misdeed. So it almost sounds like even if you don't act it out, but just having this wish and maybe fantasizing, that's a misdeed. But anyway, I think it's clear this is a fault in our mind that we need to work on and not give into as much as we can. But he does say that if we do try to counteract excitement, but fail because it's too strong, then it's not a misdeed. As long as we recognize that this is a hindrance, it's something we need to work on, and we try to work on it, we try to overcome it, but even if we're not successful, then it doesn't become a complete misdeed. And other exceptions to this, if we are trying to help other people, for example, people who might be depressed, irritated, lonely, they're in a kind of negative state of mind, and we want to cheer them up, make them feel better, put them into a better state of mind, and we're kind of, playing around with them, joking and laughing, then that's not a misdeed. Or another exception, if we want to get close to people who do behave in these ways in order to teach them the Dharma, so maybe we engage a little bit ourselves in order to get on good terms with them, and then we can help them with the Dharma. But that's tricky. We have to be careful about that. And what is our real motivation? Are we just using that as an excuse, or do we really care about helping these other people? Another exception is to maintain good relations with relatives, friends, and colleagues. And that's important too, when we're with non-Buddhist people who are important in our lives. We can't expect to always talk about Dharma with them, and if we just keep our mouth shut and don't show any joy or any excitement about anything, then they might get a negative attitude, negative impression of Dharma and what Dharma does to people. So to keep on good terms with them and keep those relationships good, make them happy. That would be, a good reason for doing this. So there are some exceptions, but we should really try to make sure our attitude in these situations is altruism. We care about others and we're not doing it out of excitement. And Alex says also, sometimes we need a break to help renew our enthusiasm and energy when we become tired or depressed. So if you're doing a little bit of entertainment or playing around just to renew your energy, although there are other ways of renewing your energy. You don't have to do that. You can go and shovel snow. He says there's no fault in that, as long as we set reasonable limits. Because my observation of Tibetan lamas, Tibetan monks and nuns, they really have fun. They enjoy themselves. I don't always know what they're talking about, but, laughter is good for us. It's healthy. Okay, next one, number 14. Believing and saying that followers of the Mahayana should remain in cyclic existence and not try to attain liberation from afflictions. So there are sutras, there are statements in the sutras that say things like, What's going on? They say things like, bodhisattvas find joy in cyclic existence, bodhisattvas delight in cyclic existence. And what this means is bodhisattvas are willing to remain in cyclic existence in order to help sentient beings out of compassion. Okay, so, but it can happen that people misinterpret these statements and think that, bodhisattvas are attached to cyclic existence. They like cyclic existence. They don't want to be free from cyclic existence. And they don't want to attain liberation from afflictions. So it's a tricky point. So if you fall into that misunderstanding and misinterpretation and you believe that and you actually talk like that, you express that. Oh yeah, we bodhisattvas, we don't want to get out of samsara. We like samsara, something like that. This would be a misdeed. Or to say that bodhisattvas don't want to overcome afflictions. They don't want to overcome their disturbing emotions. They want to keep them. So the right understanding, the correct understanding is bodhisattvas definitely want to free themselves from their afflictive emotions, greed, hatred, ignorance, and so on. Because without doing that, there's no way they can help sentient beings. But it's not true that bodhisattvas want to hang on to their afflictive emotions. And they definitely want to overcome them. But what they don't want to do is attain what's called personal liberation. Sometimes it's called solitary peace. This is the liberation or nirvana that the hearers and the solitary realizers aspire for and work for. So they just want to get themselves out of samsara without having the intention of helping all other living beings be free of samsara as well. Just get myself out. That's my goal. That's all I'm going to do. So bodhisattvas don't want to do that. Instead, bodhisattvas want to remain in samsara to help sentient beings. They don't want to exit. They want to stay. But staying in samsara doesn't mean staying with their delusions, staying with their afflictive emotions. It just means they continue to take rebirth. At a certain point, a bodhisattva will have the ability to choose their own rebirth, not just be thrown into a rebirth by karma and afflictions, but they have control over that so they can choose where they are born. And they will do that not because they like samsara, but because they have such strong compassion for sentient beings. And they want to be in the world and be where the suffering is and help sentient beings be free of their suffering. So that's what bodhisattvas do. But it is a tricky point. It is easy to misunderstand that. And in fact, when I was in Singapore, I read a book by this one Theravada teacher who was very renowned and a very prolific writer. And he was talking about, different aspects of Buddhism. And he himself said this in the book. Now, the bodhisattvas don't want to be free of samsara. They want to stay in samsara. But it had the connotation of not wanting to overcome their afflictive emotions. So I thought I should write him a letter and explain this. I never got a reply from him, but I don't know. I hope he understood. But yeah, so it is possible that people have this misunderstanding, and we just have to be careful that we don't misunderstand that and repeat that misunderstanding. Is that clear? Okay, then there's two more of the secondary misdeeds related to ethics, 15 and 16, and these are said to concern both self and others. So number 15 is not abandoning destructive actions that cause you to have a bad reputation. So Alex gives an example of this. Suppose we like eating meat. If we are among vegetarian Buddhists and we insist on eating a steak, we invite their criticism and disrespect. They will not take our words about Dharma seriously and will spread stories about us, making others unreceptive to our help as well. As budding bodhisattvas, cute term. Baby bodhisattvas, maybe. If we do not rid ourselves of such behavior, it is a great fault. Okay, so we have to be careful of our actions. And of course, especially in the early stages of our practice, we're not free of faults. We still have faults and make mistakes and so on, but we should make an effort to at least try not to act out our faults in front of others that might cause them to mistrust us, lose respect for the Dharma, and not listen to us, when we try to give them advice and so on. And then in Dr. Rinpoche's commentary, he explains it in a little more elaborate way. He says there's two possible situations. One is if we made a mistake, we acted out some fault, and people are criticizing us. People are saying critical things about us. We should try to clear that up. We should admit our error and correct it. Okay, so we should listen to this criticism that others are making, acknowledge that we did make a mistake, and then apologize and work to correct that mistake and not repeat it. So that's one possible situation. The other one is we may be criticized or blamed for something we didn't do. Okay, so it may be that we didn't do anything wrong. There may have been a mistake, a misunderstanding, misinterpretation, so we actually didn't do anything wrong, but still people are criticizing, blaming us. But we still need to clear this up and restore our reputation, because it is important to have a good reputation, not because of attachment. Our usual thing is wanting people to like us, wanting people to respect us out of the 8 worldly concerns. But for Bodhisattva, because a Bodhisattva wants to benefit sentient beings. That's their primary goal, helping sentient beings. And to be able to help sentient beings, they have to trust you. They have to believe in you. They have to be willing to listen to you. So it is important to have a good reputation, a good image in the eyes of others. Otherwise, nobody will take you seriously. when you try to teach them the Dharma and so on. So we should do what we need to do in order to make sure people do continue trusting us. And so even if there's some false rumors going around, people saying we did something we didn't do, we need to clear that up. But there's exceptions. He said, but if we think that the people who are criticizing us won't listen, they may be that kind of person, no matter what you say, they're not going to listen, or they don't believe you, they won't believe you, or they're so angry that, maybe they're just in this furious state of mind and they wouldn't even understand what you're saying, then it's okay to just do nothing. Although maybe later I was thinking, once they've calmed down, you could try to talk to them again. Okay, number 16. So this is the one I had the question about, because the way it's written in the Red Prayer Book, it says, not correcting your own afflictive actions or not helping others to correct theirs. So all the other versions of the Bodhisattva vows don't mention that first part, not correcting your own afflictive actions. And it really seems to belong to the previous one. So I actually wrote to Venerable and asked her, where did she get this wording from in the Red Prayer Book? And she said she went over the vows with Geshe Jamba Gyatso. Geshe Jamba Gyatso was this very wonderful teacher in Italy who passed away some years ago. So, but there was a translator involved, and translators do sometimes make mistakes, so there may have been a mistake in the translation. Because also in the volume 5, it also doesn't mention your own behavior. So in volume 5, it just says, not helping others to correct their destructive behavior when doing so would be helpful. So all the other versions only talk about others' behavior, not one's own behavior. So I think this might be an error in the Red Prayer Book. So Alex's explanation said, the way he expresses it is not redressing those who act with disturbing emotions and attitudes. If we are in a position of authority in a school, office, monastery, or household, and because of attachment to certain members or the wish to be liked, we fail to scold or punish those with disturbing emotions and attitudes, we're acting disruptively. This sounds familiar. I used to be like this. Maybe I'm getting a little bit different now, but I was always very shy to, point out people's misbehavior, because I thought, oh, maybe they'll be angry at me. They won't like me anymore, And so if we have such a role or responsibility with regard to other people who may be our students or junior members of the Sangha, or children if you're a parent and so on, then we should, when they are misbehaving, we should point out their misbehavior. He uses the word punish, but maybe we don't have to punish them. Follow Marshall Rosenberg's advice and find another way of dealing with them rather than punishing them. Yeah. Because, if someone's misbehaving and you don't point out that misbehavior, then they just continue. They just, continue behaving that way. And is that really good for them? And is it good for others? We have to deal with them. I knew this one woman who had a couple of kids, and she didn't believe in disciplining her kids. Her kids were just really wild and out of control. She never wanted to discipline them, tell them what to do, and so on and so forth. And I could see with those kids, and someone else pointed this out as well, that they weren't very happy because they just didn't know their boundaries. And that's not, I don't think it's good for children or for junior monastics, to be allowed to just carry on with misbehavior, maybe unaware, not really aware that this isn't a good thing to do. So it is important to point that out to children and students and junior monastics and so on, just so they have a clear understanding of what's okay and what's not okay. Okay, so if we fail to do this, don't correct others' misbehavior, then this would be a misdeed. So Dr. Rinpoche's explanation is similar. He says this misdeed emphasizes our responsibility for others' behavior. But there are some exceptions. One exception is if the misbehavior is insignificant and is only concerned with this life's affairs, and interfering would cause them a lot of distress. He didn't give an example, but I was thinking about hoarding. Some people have this habit of hoarding things, old newspapers, and then their house just gets filled up with all this old stuff that they don't want to throw away. And it's not really a negative behavior. It's not really, something unethical, immoral. I don't know why people behave that way. But anyway, if you try to get them to change and it causes them a lot of unhappiness and distress and so on, then maybe that would be an example of this, that it's not really so important in terms of their spiritual life, their spiritual practice and so on. So he says, if interfering would bring only small benefit, or would create great obstacles to them, better to leave it, to remain silent. Can anyone think of any other example?
My mother is 70-something and mentally a bit frail, and so equally physically.
Mentally what?
Frail, and a bit physically as well. And she is in the habit of sending money to people that she may or may not know, and that just ask for it. And I've had a number of my brothers and I have a number of discussions with her about this, because it falls into just being financially sort of taken advantage of. But at this point in her life, I've made a decision not to, because of particularly this. I think it'll be much more disturbing for her than just continue to do what she's doing, especially because she generates a lot of happiness out of that. So not to mess with that.
Yeah, not a bad thing to give money to people, even if they don't deserve it or they take advantage of it or whatever, because, I remember once, this practice of giving, and of course it's good to give, but then the question comes up, well, what about people who might use the money for unhealthy things like wine or, alcohol or cigarettes or drugs or whatever? And I think one teacher, I think it was Geshe Rabten, who said that, what the people are going to do with the money is not your business. That's their business. That's their karma. You giving to them out of, a good heart, a good motivation, and so on, that it's a virtuous thing. So even if they don't use the money wisely, then it's still a really good thing to do, to give. So another alternative would be to give food instead of money. Then they might still find a way of trading in the food for drugs. But who knows? People who have that kind of addiction, they'll find a way. Okay, so that's it for the misdeeds related to ethics. The next group is related to patience or fortitude. But maybe if anyone has a question about any of these that we just went through before we move on to the next section, next group.
I thought it was interesting to hear that about the one where you feel that you have to commit one of the 7 serious misdeeds. Actually, I'm not sure what those 7 are, but
the 10 non-virtuous actions.
The first 7.
So the first
okay.
7.
It said that if you're monastic, you should return your vows first, And so it makes me think that there's a little bit of a different standard involved for lay people and monastics, because lay people, if they're Buddhist, they also have a precept against killing or any of those. Well, 5 out of the...
Well, actually here in the volume 5, it says, it also says, this is based on His Holiness's teachings. Said this vow or this advice is for the spiritually advanced, people whose compassion is so great that they are willing to accept the karmic result of their action. However, spiritually advanced monastics should not transgress their root pratimoksha precepts. So it specifies the root ones. So that means killing, stealing, sexual misconduct, and lying about spiritual attainments. If they truly feel it is necessary to do so, they should disrobe first. So I think because we have, if we break one of those vows, we lose our vows completely. We can no longer remain as a monastic. So I think because of that, whereas if a lay person were to kill, even if a lay person has the 5 precepts, if they were to kill, they break that vow and they can retake it. But it's not as serious or heavy as a monastic who's taken many of those levels of vows. If they were to break, it's heavier. And they can't be retaken. You cannot, once you break one of the root, what do you call them? Parajikas. Once those are broken, you can no longer take vows again. So it's better to give them back and do that action and then take them again. But then I was thinking, but for bhikshunis, that's not allowed. It's okay for bhikshus, but not for bhikshunis. So that's a tough choice to make. Hopefully we won't find ourselves in that kind of situation.
To me, if you had that kind of realization as a bhikshuni and you needed to do that act and you gave back your precepts, you would keep your precepts clean, but you'd have so much spiritual strength that your life would go well anyway, I would think, because you're pretty far along.
Bodhisattva vows, Bodhisattva precepts are more powerful and I think more meritorious than the pratimoksha. I mean, not to disregard the pratimoksha precepts, those are very important too, those are foundation, but if you are highly accomplished spiritually and you're a bodhisattva already, or you have very, very strong compassion, then...
I really don't disagree with what Geshe Rapton said about from the side of the giver to somebody who doesn't do things wisely. But I also think, because I've actually lived with this situation, that what's better is to give to the thing that they need. Like if they need dentistry, pay the dentist directly. I think actually that way their need gets taken care of. It's oftentimes possible, but a hassle to do things like that. And then that way, you on both sides, you haven't used your compassion unwisely, and you've been able to keep your mind, with the kind of mind that you want to give.
In regards to receiving things from people or not, I've been trying to toy with, some of my friends have said, just let us know if you need anything. And so I'm not asking anything they've offered, but it's kind of a weird, big gray area of, well, just let me know if you need anything. It's like, well, I don't know how to handle that. So can you give any advice on that as far as these?
Good point. I mean, is there a rule in the Abbey about that? How is that kind of thing handled in the monastery?
We have had that situation both individually and as an Abbey. And a lot of it has to do with force for an individual. What you're talking about maybe more is really having some kind of idea about what that might mean for them. So having a conversation, like, because when somebody says, if you need anything, you don't know if they're talking about $5 or $500, and so you need to have some more information. But as an Abbey, we've had people who have wanted to donate to us, and sometimes they are, as we've known them, we've known that they're actually not taking care of themselves well enough. And so sometimes we have accepted something and given it back. And other times we have maybe not even accepted something, as I can recall. You might have better memory.
I think in terms of the individual situation, as I recall, our understanding is if someone says that I want to support you, please let me know if you need anything, then that means they want to make an offering. And our responsibility is just to qualify it. Like, okay, you said that you really wanted to make an offering, and I do need some snow boots. I wonder if that's within the framework of what you were thinking, so that they get an out. Or I need a ticket to Taiwan and it's $1,200. That might be a little bit more than you, right? So, but give them the space to say what their limits are, what their thinking was, but to also acknowledge that if they want to offer, then they generate merit for that offering, and
That's a good compromise.
Questions online, the questions are, why are the bhikkhus different?
Well, one explanation I heard, and this makes sense to me, is because, there are times when your country goes to war and the young men are called up to go and fight. And that could include monks. So even if they're monks in a monastery, they might be asked or required to go and fight in this war. And it might be a really important thing, to defend the country, which also includes defending the Dharma. Because like we saw in Tibet, if an invading country comes in, they take over everything and they kill a lot of people, they do a lot of damage, and then you can't even practice Dharma anymore. So in a situation like that, there are texts, I don't know, I haven't studied this, but there are texts that actually say, yes, even if you're a monk, put that aside, go and fight, and then you can come back and retake your vows. So I think that's my understanding, is why there was an exception made for the monks, the bhikshus, to give back vows and take them again. And I think they can do that up to how many times? 7 times. Wow. Lots of wars going on. But that has not been extended to the nuns, to the bhikshunis anyway. Although I heard from one nun I know who says this only applies to bhikshunis and not to novice nuns. So her teacher, who's very knowledgeable, very well studied in Vinaya, he says it's okay for novice nuns to disrobe and retake vows. And he actually does that. He reordains novice nuns. So it's only for bhikshunis. So I think we just have to be really stable. And if we are following things well, like here in the Abbey, before taking bhikshuni vows, somebody will train for a while as an anagarika, and then they take shikshamana, and they train well for 2 years in that. And then by the time they take bhikshuni vows, they're should be at least pretty clear and committed to this lifestyle. So there shouldn't be much need to give back your vows and then want to take them again. But it does happen. Sometimes people rush into taking ordination without really knowing themselves and thinking about what they're doing, and they're kind of in and out. I know one nun who did this twice. She disrobed, reordained, disrobed, reordained. So it's not a very stable situation. So it's much better to be really clear, to go into it slowly and gradually, and be really clear about what you're doing and have good guidance from your teachers. I hope that answers that question. Okay, so the next group of vows or misdeeds is related to patience or fortitude. And there are 4 of these. So the first one, number 17, is returning insults, anger, beating, or criticism with insults and the like. So there are these 4 kinds of behavior that might be directed at us, and they're all kind of aggressive, violent, abusive ways of behaving. So if somebody behaves towards us in one of these 4 ways, and then we respond in the same way, then that would be a misdeed. So Alex says, these trainings are not to retaliate when, first is verbally abused or criticized. So if somebody verbally abuses us, criticizes us, says nasty things to us, that's the first one. The second one is if we're just the target of somebody else's anger, somebody's angry at us. Third is beaten. So they actually physically harm us. And the fourth one is, he says, humiliated. So maybe that's, insulting, saying insulting words. So if anyone, acts towards us in any of these 4 ways, and if we return the same kind of behavior back to the other person, then this is creating this misdeed. He says, since training ourselves not to retaliate in these 4 trying situations acts as a cause for our patience to grow, if we put this aside, we damage our development of this positive trait. So if we do react and retaliate in any of these 4 ways, then we're not allowing our patience, our tolerance, our fortitude to grow, to develop. So we should at least try to learn the antidotes to anger, get really familiar with those. So even when we find ourselves in these kind of situations, we can at least recall that it's not good to react with anger. And like Shantideva says, turn to stone. At least make yourself immobile, non-reactive, non-responsive, and don't act out the anger. The next is neglecting those who are angry with you by not trying to pacify their anger. So this is where someone else is angry at us. Dr. Rinpoche says this involves doing nothing to stop others' anger towards us. Alex says, if others are annoyed with us and holding a grudge, if we do nothing about it, and do not try to calm their anger because of pride, spite, jealousy, laziness, indifference, not caring. So there could be various reasons, motives why we would do nothing. We hamper our perfection of patience because we allow the opposite of patience, namely anger, to continue unabated. So we're allowing the other person's anger to continue to smolder, and that's not good for them. To avoid this fault, we apologize whether or not we have offended or done anything wrong. So we should at least try to help the other person calm down. I had this situation when somebody was really angry at me, and I didn't even know until I got a phone call from Lama Zopa Rinpoche who started giving me advice on how to deal with this person. And I thought, wow, why is he saying this? And then I found out this person was so angry at me, he wrote to Lama Zopa Rinpoche and said, send her away. Tell her to go away from where I was, the center I was staying at. So I was like, wow. So anyway, I found out what happened, why he was angry at me, and it was just some misunderstanding. So I got in touch with him and I said, let's have a talk about this. So we got together, and I really did feel sincerely the wish for him not to be angry at me. And I didn't feel it was just for my reputation, but it's just so painful. Anger is such a painful thing. So I explained, we talked, and he was happy. So even if we didn't do anything deliberately to upset somebody, make them angry, it's still important to reach out to them and at least try to help them calm down, instead of just saying, well, that's his problem, it's nothing to do with me. He wants to be angry. So that would be a fault if we were to do that. Okay, the next one, number 19, refusing to accept the apologies of others. So this is similar to one of the root downfalls. Number 3, the third root downfall was also about not accepting others' apologies. So there's different versions of how this one differs from the root downfall. Alex says that the root downfall, third root downfall, involves not listening to others' apologies when they plead for forgiveness at the moment when we are angry with them. So like on the spot. The other person is apologizing and we say, no, don't accept. Whereas this one, we do not accept their apologies after the occasion when we are holding a grudge. So that's one difference, one explanation of the difference. But other commentaries say that the difference is that in the case of the third root downfall, that requires the 4 binding factors, but this does not. But I don't know, I was a little uncomfortable about that, because if you know, in the case of the third root downfall, it requires the 4 binding factors to be a complete downfall, a complete break. But if you have not all 4, if you have 3, 2, or 1, it's still something negative. So then how would it differ from this one? Then it's like you're breaking 2 vows. Well, you're not really breaking the first one. You're not totally losing it. You're still doing something negative. I don't know. This is just my thoughts. So to me, Alex's makes a little more sense. But I suppose there's different explanations by different teachers and different commentaries. So there's no one right answer, one explanation that everybody has to agree with. Anyway, the point is, if someone is apologizing, it would be wrong for us to continue holding a grudge, being angry, not accepting their apology. Next one, number 20, acting out thoughts of anger. So Alex says, once we become angry in any situation, we act contrary to our development of patient tolerance. If we dwell on it, hold a grudge, and don't apply opponent forces to counter it. If we do apply counter forces, such as meditating on love for the objects of our annoyance, but are unsuccessful, we are not at fault. Because we are at least trying, we do not weaken our cultivation of patience. Okay, so we should at least try, we should at least recognize this state of mind of anger is harmful, is negative, is destructive, and at least try to counteract it, whether we're successful or not. So even if we're not successful, the anger is still there, but at least we tried to overcome it, then we don't commit this misdeed. So those are the 4 for anger. I mean, patience. Well, they are about anger. Anger is the opposite of patience. So, yeah. And then I thought to start on the next group, which are related to joyous effort. There were 3 related to perfection, number 4, joyous effort. Okay, the first of these is number 21. Gathering a circle of friends or disciples because of your desire for respect or profit, gain, I guess. Alex says, when we gather a circle of friends, admirers, or pupils, or decide to marry or live with someone, if our motive is the wish for others to show us respect, give us love and affection, shower us with gifts, serve us, massage our backs, and do our everyday tasks, we lose enthusiasm for doing anything positive ourselves, such as helping others. We are attracted to an inferior mode of operation, namely telling others what to do for us. So Dr. Rinpoche says, normally, I guess he's talking more about a teacher, Bodhisattva teacher, we accept followers for their sake and not for our sake, because we are concerned for their well-being. So this asks us to check our mind, our motivation for engaging in relationships with other people. What is our real motive? Is it for their sake, for their benefit, or for our benefit? And I mean, of course, we do benefit from friendships with others or living in a community, like living in this community here. It's very nice to live with other people, such nice people especially. But, you know, is that our main motivation? Just what I get out of it, just what will benefit me, as opposed to what I can do, how I can help others, how I can serve others. Of course, it's difficult to be totally free of self-centeredness. That's such a habitual state of mind, very difficult to overcome. I think we have to be quite highly developed to be totally free of self-centeredness, seeking something for ourselves, but at least to be aware of it, aware that it's there and it's not a helpful state of mind, especially on the Bodhisattva path. We need to overcome that. And also, you know, if we go into relationships with that as our motive, then it's probably going to be disappointed at some point. We're not going to get what we want. People are not going to always comply with our wishes and needs and so on. And then we could find ourselves being angry and resentful and so on. So, yeah, just being aware of that and really trying to make sure our relationships with others, interactions with others and so on have more altruism and less self-centeredness. So number 22, not dispelling the 3 types of laziness. Sloth, attraction to distracting activities, and self-pity and discouragement. So there's these 3 kinds of laziness that interfere with joyous effort. Alex says, if we give in to laziness, indifference, apathy, moods of not feeling like doing anything, wanting to count snowflakes, or not being interested in anything at all, or addiction to sleeping long hours, lying in bed all day, taking naps, or lounging around doing nothing, we become addicted to this and lose all enthusiasm for helping others. Of course, we take rest if we are sick or exhausted, but it's a fault to spoil ourselves by being too soft. So Dr. Rinpoche says, yeah, it's no fault if we sleep a lot due to illness or excessive tiredness after traveling. And if we do try to overcome laziness but are not successful, then there's no misdeed. So we should again be attentive, aware of our mind, and if we are being more lazy and not as... It's a difficult balance, you know, because sometimes if we're too, what's the word? Energetic, we can burn ourselves out or get lung, stress. That's the kind of a meditator's disease, when you push yourself to do a lot of practice, a lot of meditation, a lot of prostrations. You can get your internal winds out of balance and then get sick. So we do have to find a balance. How much we can do and not go too far, but not slip into laziness. So I think as time goes on, getting to know our particular needs and dispositions and so on, we can find what works best for us. But it's tricky sometimes. Maybe I'll stop there. It's probably enough for today. And if there are any questions.
Regarding neglecting those who are angry with you and trying not to pacify their anger. I mean, that's also really tricky, you know, if you're putting your best foot forward and someone's just triggered by something. Because, you know, for those of us who have been trained, you know, familiarly to take responsibility for everybody's feelings, including your own and the whole world's feelings, it's sometimes really hard, particularly for me when someone's angry with me. I either go away or I try to fix it, you know, and it's the timing's off or it's not something that has anything to do with me. So I think is a hard one for me particularly to address, because I've been, that's the inculcation, is that I've been taught that if somebody's really angry with me, it has to be something I've done. Mm-hmm. It's my fault and I have to remedy it, apologize, you know, make it okay. So, and then looking at, you know, even nonviolent communication, is there's an unmet need there, but once again, I may not be able to meet it. So there's another little layer of that in there as well.
Well, I think as long as you're clear in your mind that you do have that tendency and that is actually not accurate, because each person, I mean, this is according to Buddhism, each person is responsible for their thoughts and feelings. And if someone is angry at you, I mean, even if you did do something wrong, you know, still, it's not your fault that they are angry. That's coming from their own karmic seeds and tendencies and so on. So, but it wouldn't be right to go to the other extreme and say, well, that's just your problem because you have karmic seeds. You know, you have seeds of anger in your mind and you don't know how to control your anger. So it's all your fault. So that we wouldn't want to do that either. So we do have, I mean, cause and effect. There's many, many different causes and conditions causing someone to get upset. And it's possible something we did, something we said was one of those causes and conditions. So I think we need to take a certain amount of responsibility, but not overdo it. Like you're describing. I guess I've heard this from people from certain families that are, what's it called? What's that thing called? Codependent, dysfunctional, whatever. Yeah. So, yeah, it's good to be aware that you do have that tendency and not let that dominate your mind, but at the same time not go to the other extreme of, I have no responsibility here. So a middle way. And also, you know, even if you try, like in that story I mentioned, you know, I really did sincerely want to help this person to not be angry, calm down, and you know, see things more clearly. And it was successful. But if it wasn't, you know, if he'd continued being angry at me, you know, then it would have been best for me to just say, well, I tried. I mean, because that did happen with somebody else. Somebody else who got really angry at me. And I, you know, really tried to communicate with him. I even went to his door, knocked on his door, you know, and he just didn't want to talk to me at all. So I said, well, okay, I did try. I tried as much as I could. He just wants to continue being angry at me. And hopefully it'll go away one day. But so we just have to understand what we are responsible for and what we are not. And as long as we do sincerely apologize for whatever we did or the person thought we did, then we can't do more than that. Even the Buddha, I always think to myself, you know, the Buddha couldn't appease Devadatta, what's his name? Devadatta's mind. So Devadatta just continued being angry and jealous and hateful and even, you know, tried to kill the Buddha. So the Buddha couldn't change his mind, so we can't change other people's minds.
I'm laughing about this, the one about not gathering a circle of friends because of your desire for respect. And you're saying or I think it was Alex Burson saying, deciding to marry or live with someone, so they will shower us with love, affection, gifts, massage us, and do our daily tasks. And to me, it's like, why else would you get married? So I can see there that, I don't know, either my motivation for being in even just friendships, it's like because they'll say nice things to me, it's because they'll make me feel better about myself. But just to see how like polluted our normal motivations are for like getting close to somebody or, you know, forming friendships, it's really their best interest may not be there front and center. And this is something I've been really working on since I moved here, like how to be a good friend without any attachment. And it's been a real steep learning curve, I think.
Okay, thank you. So we'll stop there and dedicate the merit, the positive energy for the benefit of all living beings.